Hi, I'm Dr. Tracy Sermons, and I want to thank you for joining us for another exciting episode of DisruptED TV. I'm joined today by Tara Martin and Jay Billy, and we're going to talk a little bit about the books that they've written and how they came to write those. Because what I have learned through many years in education, more years than I'd like to admit, is that everyone has a story and that people have a passion, and many of them struggle to think about ways to put that down on paper. So let's kind of do a two-part thing. Just tell us a little bit about the book you wrote, the story that you told, and then we're going to spend some time talking about how you got that from in you to out here where now it can serve many others.
Awesome. Do you want to start? You want me to
Okay.
start?
My book is Lead with Culture, What Really Matters in Our Schools. And I have been, for the last couple of years, going to different conferences and presenting. And I happened to be presenting at a conference with Beth Huff, who is a co-author to Lead Like a Pirate. Mm-hmm. We were presenting on school culture and, putting ideas down, and we put our presentation together and talked about it. And we were talking about how to build school culture and things like that, and sharing each other's ideas. We share a lot of what we do through our PLN. So it came to me that this could be a book. This could be something that we should share in a bigger way than just the 50 people that came to our session to talk about it. So Beth was in the process of finishing Lead Like a Pirate, so I said, well, okay, I can do this, and I started writing down ideas. I just really started with some random thoughts, what about this, what about this, what about this, and then started writing down, okay, these are the things that I do or I've seen done that I think relate to this topic, this topic, this topic. So that's really the beginning of the process for me, but school culture is something I'm passionate about. And so that kind of brought the process all together.
Okay.
Yes.
So you tapped into that passion. You saw that there was a perceived need, because when you're doing a presentation, it's like an invitation to a party. You hope people will come, and people will come if it speaks to them. So mm-hmm. The very fact that people were coming, that you were filling the room, said, I think I have something here. But what I hear you saying is, a place to begin is to speak to something that is deeply meaningful to you, mm-hmm. right? And that you started by getting some ideas down and then brought some form to it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and you want to, at least I believe, you can't just want to write a book. It has to be something you truly believe in. It has to be something you're passionate about. Mm-hmm. I would love to say that I had a lot of different ideas, but it's stuff that I've done and stuff that I really feel important about, or things that I've seen other people do that I thought, oh, that's really cool. Mm. And that kind of fits into the school culture ideal, and that's what I wanted to share.
Excellent. Tara, tell us.
So I wrote the book, Be Real, Educate from the Heart. It's all about staying true to who you are, but empowering those that you serve to also stay true to who they are. So REAL is an acronym: relatable, expose vulnerability, always approachable, and learning through life. And I think if I bring that to the table and collectively everyone brings their realness, then we have this dynamic team of educators, students, whomever, the world in general. And who wouldn't want to be a part of something so authentic? So being real is a collection of stories and strategies to stay true to who you are, bringing all of your life experiences, all of your strengths and your weaknesses, and your overcoming obstacles and failures as well. And so in one of the chapters, I have a chapter called Heart Healthy Salt. In that chapter, I talk a lot about synaptics, about the why, mm-hmm. knowing your why. And we often talk about our why, but I think sometimes I feel like my perspective is people don't zoom out enough. Like their why can only fit the current role that they're in or the current situation that they're dealing with. But your why, to me, has to be so much bigger. And I kind of explain that with real. Being real is not just for me, it's for everyone. I think everyone needs to be their authentic self and we will have a better world. I honestly think that. But once you discover your why, then it's kind of like MLK. He's a perfect example of this. So he inspired people to believe his dream, correct? He didn't say, you're going to believe my dream because it's amazing.
Right.
And I also wrote the book Real, not to say you're going to believe that you should be real because I said it's amazing, but I want to inspire others to salt or season the world with their why. So what you're seasoning, your salt is the what's to your why. So for me, I love to write. I told you before the interviews, I write every single day in my journal, every single day. Except for when I had writer's block for a couple of weeks. Other than that, so your what's can be lots of things. Your what's can be Jay wearing silly hats and greeting the kids in the mornings. Your what's could be having coffee over with a friend and sharing your vulnerabilities. Your what's can be writing, speaking, teaching. Your what's are the salt to season the world with your why. And others should be inspired to want to be a part of your why, but not only that, to discover their own why. So I think your why is the ticket to starting to write a book, like zooming out and what is it that you want to inspire the world to want to be a part of.
Oh, I love that. Because that, I think, is what you need to propel you through the hard times. Because it really
Totally.
has to be an arduous experience. I mean, while it is cathartic, it can probably be exciting. I'm sure there are many emotions that you experienced along the way. The thrill of then this existing, which, by the way, did you notice how well they look together?
I said, our
They
books
really
are nice together.
I didn't even
beautifully
realize
complemented. I love that. They look great, and people should buy them both,
Totally.
right? And have them both
Totally.
with them at all times. But I'm sure there are a lot of days where you could be experience self-doubt and wonder, is this really worth, and who am I, and so forth. So that compelling why, where you pull up and see beyond just today or even just me, really, I guess that can fuel you. That has to propel the journey. And Jay, I'm seeing you nod very affirmingly. So what are you thinking about?
Well, it's funny that you say that because, there are those days that you just go like, I'm writing a book about school culture, and today just really sucked, I have a chapter in my book called Kindness Matters. And those kids just weren't nice to each other today. Who am I to tell people in the world about, school culture or kindness or anything like that? But when you, as Tara said, when you look at the whole big picture and you step back, I think it's more about looking at schools differently, inspiring people to look at school and education differently, inspiring people to think, not just read what we say, but to think on their own and say, hey, we can't do this or we can do this, but let's try this or let's do this. Or in her book, there's so many ties to brain research and things like that that are really important, that really bring it back to the real why of we should do things. So it doesn't have to be that specific example, but really the idea that we all have something in us, and we want to inspire people to bring that out, and we both want to change education to make it really a different world and a non-standardized world for our students to be better. We want our students to become thinkers and doers and the kind of kids that want to change the world and not just get all the answers right on a standardized test, but the ones that want to make the world a better place.
And I heard you mention that in Tara, your book, you integrate some brain research. Yeah. Right? So you had some research in there, and Jay, did you also look at what some other writers or thinkers have written?
Totally.
So you took the research, But what I'm hearing you say then is you reflected on your own ideas and insights. You looked around at your experiences, and you took the research and extended that or supplemented that with your personal narrative.
Agreed. I think so. Our publisher, we share a publisher, Dave Burgess Consulting, which is fantastic, by the way. If you've not read their books, you totally should. I love the way the Burgesses do business because they created this publishing company to disrupt publishing companies. Right? He wanted to write Teach Like a Pirate, but the publishing companies didn't want Teach Like a Pirate for a variety of reasons. If you buy my book, you can read the foreword, or you could just ask Dave.
Okay.
But either way, they started this company so educators, like you said earlier, can share their real story. So while our stories have research and it's embedded within, and then it's also included in the backs of the book, we get to tell our story with real examples, with so people can connect. And like Jay said earlier, it's not that they're going to all wear silly hats and greet everyone at the buses or whatever the different things that Jay does, but they can say, I'm not really that person, but I love to be silly in this way, or I love to have fun and bring joy in this way, and I love kindness because we can do this. So we get to tell our story, and then we get to integrate the research, but you don't bog down in research in the Dave Burgess Consulting books. And I like that. As much as I love research, I love to be able to read the story and then be like, wow, I can apply this in many different ways. And here's the science behind why this is going to work. So just a little plug for Dave Burgess Consulting. And besides that, they let us stay true to our voice. So when you read my book, you probably hear me talking. When I read Jay's book, I can hear him having that staff meeting with his first group on that very first day. I can hear him being so blunt and then being like, oh my gosh, I probably could have done that differently. I can hear him sing.
Yes, that voice.
So you get to keep your voice. Yeah. They don't strip that from you.
And they ask for that.
They really appreciate it.
They appreciate it. They want your manifesto. You know? So and that's what really interested me about writing and writing for Dave was that I could really tell my story, and that's it. You know, we had a great editor who makes me look much smarter than I am, but that's me, and that's my story, and that's been the feedback so far from the book is people say that know me, they say I hear you talking, and again I am very blunt, and I'm often very not politically correct, so you can hear some of those stories in there, you know, that hopefully resonate with people reading and inspire them to look at what we're doing and be themselves.
I think Dave and Shelley really encourage you to be yourself. And then if you get stuck along the way, they're right there to help you. They're within arm's distance, a text away, a call away, an email away. So I really appreciate that too as a new writer. I mean, like I said, I write every day, but when you start to create your manifesto, it's a little different than writing in your journal all the things you're thinking, right? I'm certainly not going to share my brain with the entire world. So,
which would be scary.
The writing, totally. I don't even really understand it. But writing a book it's just such an amazing journey.
So here's where I get stuck. Is and this is almost kind of emotional for me because I remember meeting Roland Barthes, who I love his books, Learning from Within and so forth. And when I've wanted to write for a long time, but part of my struggle is, well, who are you? So when you said you get to be your authentic self and you get to tell your story, I think one of the things that I have struggled with, and maybe others too, well, who are you? So sometimes there can be another voice that says, well, who said you have anything worth reading? And in other words, like, who am I? And so I felt like I almost needed permission to speak because as a student, my whole life I've been in school since 4 years old. And what you do in school is, particularly when you do your dissertation, when you cull from all those things that others have written, and you don't editorialize. You don't have your voice. You bring together, all the writings of others, and then you synthesize that and present that information. When you leave that and you use that only to perhaps legitimize or to validate some of the things you're saying, but then you go out there and you tell your story, one of the things that sometimes that a person can wrestle with is your own self-worth or your own legitimacy in why would anyone buy a book with my name on it? I struggle with that.
I think.
Can you relate to that, or
yeah,
do
totally.
I just need therapy?
So no, you
I
don't
may just need therapy.
You don't need therapy.
I
You're
think it
good.
could be.
You are normal.
Okay.
Yes. That's really the first time you ever
Okay.
hear that. But
No one's ever said that.
I know. They've only
Never
told me
said
that
that.
once ever. So I
was
talk
tested.
about in Be Real how the heart and the mind often wrestle against each other, and I talk about that a lot because being real sometimes is hard because your heart is saying, "Go for it,
Yeah.
be real."
Yeah.
Tell your story. But your mind is saying, but what about, I talk about the cannonball in theory. So in one of my stories, you could jump off the diving board, just cannonball in, make a splash, swim to the side, and get out and feel like you just accomplished something. But then there's the girls sitting on the side that aren't wet, that are just sitting there in their beautiful bathing suits. I call them the dabblers. They're the critics in the world.
Yes.
So they're the ones going to say like, wow, that wasn't really that great of a splash. And really, is that all you have to offer? Those kinds of things. So, but those people are not jumping in. If you notice, they're still dry. They're fine. They're just sitting on the side looking pretty.
Right.
I think Brene Brown says it best in one of her TED Talks. She talks about the critics. She said, you know what? Not listening to critics any longer that haven't done what I'm doing. So if you're going to criticize my writing, be a writer.
Where's yours?
Right. So get in the arena with me if you're going to be a critic. Otherwise, you can just sit out there and I'm not going to listen to your criticism. And I think at some point we have to tell our mind, and I'm still working on this, I'm not an expert.
Okay.
But I think you have to tell your mind, I'm not going to worry about all of those things because my heart is telling me to tell the story. And I really think I have this salt that I need to season the world. And they need to know my why. They need to know my why, but they also need to be inspired to share their own. So your heart has to win.
Right. So that it has to speak, if you will, more loudly than that voice. And I gestured to like that little voice that sits on your shoulder and that fills you with that sense of fear of criticism and worry and self-doubt and
you face it like a billion times. I don't know if Jay's still handling it right now, but I just released my book on Monday, and I feel like the mind and the critics haven't come yet, but I know they're coming. Because when you lay your heart out there, you are telling your story. You're no longer telling all this collective stories of all these people. So I think with the dissertation, you can say, you know what, that's kind of their part that they're
It's over
criticizing.
here.
It's not really
Yeah,
mine.
yeah.
But when it's yours,
It's risky.
it's scary and it's very vulnerable. And so I often have to tell my mind, even now, like, I'm not going to worry about that because I shared my heart and hopefully people can connect. So I don't know. Jay is a much better expert at dealing with the mind over the heart, I'm sure. The heart over the mind.
It comes with age. It comes with age, I think, a little more. So that, Tara was talking about worrying about. I was proud and happy that people wanted to hear my story, and so I was able to put it down. Continue and put down ideas and thoughts about what it was. And I say I don't care. Of course, everybody has an ego and they want to be liked and things like that. But I really felt like if this is what people want, that's awesome. And if not, it is what it is. Yeah, they won't buy it, and it is what it is. I'm proud that, like I said, that somebody wanted me to write it down and put it in a book. And that's where I go with that. I kind of just have always been that way. I do what I want. in a non-evil way.
Right.
You know, so I think that has worked for me. But I'm confident enough to think that as I said, if people like it, cool. If not, I put it down there. That, you know, I think, you know, when we were talking before about, you know, it's kind of a bucket list. You always wanted to write a book, and it was a bucket list for me. And I never had an idea before of what I would write about. I had some really good ideas, but I thought nobody will read that. You know, especially in some of the jobs that I've had, working with some really difficult kids. I have a great book about working with some really tough kids. But again, the only people that might read that, because they're hilarious stories, are the people that do those kind of things,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
So really, you have to kind of get past that, you know, this is my story, this is what it is, and if people don't like it, then they won't buy it,
Yeah.
you know?
And I think when you're zoomed out enough, that your why would fit a lot of people. You know what I'm saying? It's wide. One of the things Dave Burgess talks about when he's onboarding new writers is he talks about it needs to be wide. Like it needs to be able to be
Reach.
an evergreen. It's not going to fade away like next year. Every year you're going to want to be real. Every year you're going to want to build a positive culture no matter where you're
It's
at.
timeless.
Yes,
too, right?
it's evergreen. It's never going to die. It's going to be live on forever. Like Teach Like a Pirate. It's thriving still 6 years later because the strategies used in that, they're timeless. They're never going to go away. So I think that's important too. When you're writing, zoom out. Just keep zooming out. Being real can work as a mom. I need to be real. As a teacher, as an administrator, as a human being in society. It doesn't matter where you're at. Building a positive culture, it doesn't matter what, I don't care if you're a teacher or a school leader, you want to build a positive culture for your business, you could learn lots of things from that book. So I think zooming out on your big why and seeing how it would reach a variety of people is really important too.
So we need to write from a place of passion and address something that's timeless, important, and wide. And then beyond that, let's talk a little bit about process. So we've worked to quiet the voice of self-doubt. So now we have our idea, and what would be some strategies, tips, and approach that helps me take what I know and to put it on paper?
Yeah, Tara,
So-
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh.
Yeah.
For me, I think we had a similar approach with our acronym. That was a great organization skill. So, as versus journal writing, where you're just telling your journal all the things that you're reflecting on, you begin to reflect in a very organized way. So, relatable, exposed vulnerability, always approachable, learning through life became my buckets, if you want to call them that. Dave calls them buckets when he's helping other writers. So when you put your ideas into these buckets, you start to formulate this story. And what's great about them is, I don't know about you, but my very best ideas come when like in the shower, driving, running, you know, when you can't write.
Right.
And so a lot of times I would just voice memo myself on my phone.
Okay.
Like, hey, you remember this story when you were working with that resistant teacher? This would go fantastic in the relatable section. So here's how I would tell that story. And as I'm driving, I just tell the story from start to finish. I love telling stories anyway, so from start to finish. But when I got home that evening, I just transcribed it. It was super easy for me to start collecting my thoughts like that. Because sometimes when you sit at your computer, you just see the blinking cursor.
Yes. Oh.
And you're like, I know I have some relatable stories. Like, what are they? Am I even relatable? Like, I don't even know. But as you are getting them, it's great to document them however you can. If you can write them down, fantastic. But if you can't, voice memo yourself is really great. And you can always transcribe them later. I had so many stories that we had to cut them out. Because I had a commute, a 30-minute, and I would just constantly tell myself all kinds of stories that I should use. So what did you do?
I didn't use the word bucket, but it's the same kind of thing. I would say, well, kindness matters. What stories do I have that fit into the kindness category? Passion matters. Let's talk about why passion's important, and then what stories do I have where I showed where I use my passion, and then let's use some examples of how others could use that. So I kind of came in that direction. And I actually had about 22 or 23 different chapters started. Some that I was able to fill with really good stories and really good examples, and some that I ended up pushing to the side or combining with others. And that's how my writing process worked for me, to have the idea of what fits into culture. Honesty, purpose, intentionality, kindness, trust, things like that, and then
start to fill them up.
And then fill each of those buckets. Some of them sat empty for a long time, and then something would happen, and I'd go, oh yeah, I remember that, or this just happened in school. I'm going to write that down, and then also from being connected, you hear about other people what they did, and I go, oh, that's a good thing. I'll use that. I use a story of community matters. There's a lot of ways that I think community is very important in our schools, building that community as well as using the community around you. And one of my friends did the Sweet 16 of books, but differently. He went around the community and he had people from all around the community reading books on YouTube, and he would make little YouTube clips of. So not only did he engage the community in that great activity for kids to in literacy, but it was that they were fully involved because they were following to see which came down to the final winner. So the community was all involved, and so I used his story, but like I said, kind of filling each of those categories as we went. And one of the last things was what helped me was that I had these ideas. I had some things down. I needed a deadline. It really helped me to have that deadline for them to say, I want something from you by September 30th.
Oh, okay.
Because there would be literally months when I wouldn't write anything. And again, when we're doing our jobs every day, so you're busy and you get home at night and you don't want to do anything, and 6 o'clock the next morning you're right back at it, doing it again. And I'd literally have a month or two sometimes when I didn't write anything. And then other times, a Saturday or a Sunday, I could fill up 2 chapters. Wow. And really get
Not
going.
me. Oh. Like, that's not my process.
Yes, that's my process.
Yeah. So I think that's important to note, though, that every writer has their own process.
Yes. Yeah.
Because so I had to write every single day. I have to write every single day, at least in my journal. But on my book, I didn't necessarily write every single day, but I at least had to voice memo myself. I thought it was important to keep it fresh in my mind the whole time. And so actually there was a point where I experienced writer's block. And I've written every single day for as long as I can remember. So this is like the first time in my life that I couldn't write for 2.5 weeks. And I was frightened. Yeah. In fact, I called the Burgesses and they walked me through it. Like, this is very normal. For the first time ever, they let me know that I was normal. And you're going to be okay. It'll come out. And you know what was so powerful about writer's block? So if you ever experience this and you're going through the writing process, when I came out, I was so collected. So all these thousands of stories that I had for REAL, my acronym's only 4 letters, and I had probably enough to fill up 5 books, of stuff. But when I came out of writer's block, organizing the stories and what really made sense and what really helped me season the world with my why became more clear. Like, the clarity was so much more there. So I feel like if you do experience writer's block and you happen to have the same experience as me, it might be a good thing for you. Like, you've just given so much of yourself, you need to step back and consume a little bit from your PLN, from people, and then you go back and you give again. And so it's clearer. Writing is so important to me, the word choice, the animation, the voice. I love every aspect. I love alliteration. I love all the figurative language. So it wasn't just telling my story to me, but it was telling my story and trying to be like the best writer ever, right, at the same time. And so it was really exhausting. And I think that's why I went through that writer's block, but when I came out, it was
Like,
amazing.
like clarity.
Yeah. And only time I felt a little bit restricted was when we went through the editing process and they're like, oh, I think this needs to be moved here. And I'm like, don't marry any copy. Don't marry like your first or your 20th copy of your book. Like, don't get married to it because you're going to divorce a bunch of times. So, but moving things around and trusting our editor, who was amazing, Erin Casey, she's so good, and her whole team, but trusting them to give us advice that's going to help the reader truly understand what we're trying to convey to them. So I think mostly just telling your story. Like, you should tell your story, and however you have to get it written down, be it a deadline, you're just going to push it all out, or periodically you're going to do something, or maybe you space it out. Whatever it is, get it on paper, because if you talk about it forever, you're never going to write it. So start getting it down.
Right.
I think it's most important.
Or I found myself going to Barnes and Noble and other places and buying lots of books about how to write. And one of them said, if you really want to write, stop reading books about
Just
how
write,
to write
just write.
and write. I thought, oh my gosh, that's brilliant.
That's
You
Dave
know?
Burgess's advice. He
Yeah.
always says, start writing.
Just write.
Start writing. The greatest thing is, so I really did have to cut maybe 60 pages, 60 Word doc, the Google Doc pages. That's a lot of book pages.
Yeah.
And they become blogs. So it's not wasted writing.
That's a good
Like, you
point.
can later just
Another
use
con-
them as a blog. They're great stories, but they just didn't need to fit in the, you didn't need a 500-page book that you could tell in two, you know? So, yeah.
And I know it's funny because we're so different in that.
Totally.
In that process, because people were surprised I could read, much less write. So.
Not true. That's not,
Yeah, I know.
But you know, as she talked about being so conscious of the writing and the process and
Figurative language.
figurative language and alliteration and things like that, I go back and read through it and I go, look at that, I used alliteration there, or look at that, I used onomatopoeia without even knowing, not even thinking about it, because I write like I speak, and it's out there. And as I said, Dave encouraged that for me. That was what he said people want to hear.
Yeah.
So that was a good part.
And really what struck me is just how personal the process, so you each had very different processes, you had different pathways, and yet congratulations, you both came to this exciting culmination. The big aha for me, well, there's been several in the course of this conversation. One of them is that what I heard is you both started with what you knew best, which is your story. And then you organize that, and then you use the research perhaps or other people's writings to supplement or support that. And I think so you went first to a personal space where you started to write, and I have felt like I needed to go to the library. I felt like I need to go to the bookstore, because until I've read all the books that exist on culture or truth or being your best self or whatever it is, leadership, then I wasn't ready to write a book yet, because I hadn't written everything else that had been written. So you're even looking at me like, are you crazy?
Don't do that.
No, don't do
I'm
that.
just saying,
Yes.
like, I almost stopped consuming because I was so afraid that I was going to read something that was what I was already thinking, that I just wanted the
You don't
editor
wanna
to
know.
tell me,
Yeah.
like, that's already been written.
Right.
I just wanted to wait for that. But I think, I really think, Tracy, this comes back to just being real. If your real story is this that's burning in your heart, you should tell it, because no one else is going to be able to tell your story. And the reason why, just like technology can never replace humans, truly, completely. No one else can tell your story. They can't bring your experiences. They can't bring your passions. They can't bring you, your personality, and tell the story that you have burning in your soul, because no one can truly ever understand you because they've never walked a day in your life. So I think when you said it at the onset, you said everyone has a story. I think that's so true. Maybe not everyone writes a book to tell their story. There's a lot of whats to share your why. But if you feel like writing is one of your whats, your salt to season the world, I think you need to write your story.
That is amazing. I almost feel like I should just go directly home and start writing.
Yeah, do that.
So I
can't wait to
fired
read
up. And I am feeling more connected with my passion and with the purpose and even with the stories and that you've given me some insights into process and even some strategies to quiet that critic that keeps telling me not yet or who are you. Yeah. So really, thank you so much. And I think this will really powerfully resonate with many people who struggle with their own demons in trying to get their message down on paper. So,
and I think no matter what your story is, you should share it. Find the avenue that you need to share it because the world needs to know all of our stories. It's what makes us connect to others. So writing might not be your passion. It may not even be a what that you ever want to season the world with, your why. But speaking could be it, or teaching or sharing in a small group setting, whatever it is, share your story. It's part of being real. It's super important to build culture.
Yes.
It's important to build a community.
Absolutely. And we're all better for that then. Well, thank you so much for this really insightful and powerful and exciting conversation. I've really enjoyed our time together. Very inspiring. And so what we'd like to do is to ask you to look into the camera and share information where someone could reach you should they wish to continue the conversation with you. All right, so just
Tara?
there you go.
Yeah, so my name is Tara Martin. You can find me on Twitter at TaraMartinEDU. And you can also find us at daveburgessconsulting.com. Both Jay and I's books are advertised there, as well as our websites. But please do visit my website, which is tarammartin.com. And you can find a lot of resources for the book, including a study guide and different resources for each part of the book that you may or may not want to share with your students or staff about being real.
And I'm Jay Billy, and you can find me on Twitter at JAYBILLY2. And I'm still principal in Lawrence Township. I'll be at Ben Franklin Elementary School next year, which is a new adventure for me. But you can find me an email, the letter J, BILLY, at LTPS, L as in Lawrence Township Public Schools.org. And yes, the book is Lead with Culture, What Really Matters in Our Schools, and I hope that you'll find something inspiring in there. As I said, there's a lot more questions than answers a lot of times, but I really talk about being purposeful and intentional and honest in making our schools better.
And our books are sold on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, so yes, you can also find them there.
All right, this has been an inspiring episode of DisruptED TV. My name is Dr. Tracy Severns, and I want to thank Tara Martin and Jay Billy for talking with us about how to be the best me and how to be the best we. And I hope that you have something that you can bring back to your school. Thank you.